I'm going to try to do this in one take. When I am asked about my MKUltra experiences, the misconception is that it just one day ended. It's easier to talk about it when it's distanced by time, perhaps, but I will be holding back some tears or a choking sensation in my throat while I get the disclaimers out of the way, aiming to keep this close to 10 minutes. Before I begin, this is not an introductory story for my encounters, with these types of scenarios, but what I'm about to say is something that as of this moment, I've only confided to tell 2 individuals prior. It happened a few years ago, but I've been asked to speak about topics close to this one, so here goes. And I felt this would shed some light on my situation, and although it will be kept to what I'm permitted to say. This described experience is not intended to stereotype any groups, organizations, or hold blame on them for the actions of one or a few of its members. I am merely conveying my own personal life experience in hopes to truly leave this world a better place than when I found it. Okay, so I'd moved away, trying to get away from being stalked. I moved to a really bad part of town, and I didn't know if my family cared to know what happened to me or not, but even they didn't know for a time if I was alive or not. But the people in my life were threatened, so I tried to start my life over a couple towns away. I had taken a partial vow of silence and communicated mostly non-verbally, but I did sometimes speak. It's important that I mention this because it was all I really had for a while. That and obscure, hard-to-find educational books. And the last 2 things, I can discuss the topic of various types of Satanism, in quotes, to clarify the topic if it's requested, because I'm not ignorant to its various forms, which are mostly benevolent to life, humanity, and the world. Surprising as that may be for some to hear, those who know me already know that I'm not anti-satanic or anti-any religion. Esotericism, if they harm none, their will is accordance with love. Otherwise, it's not my business to judge others. And the second thing was, I was also involved, without going into detail, with a gang as a young child, and I remember it founded to protect people from violent situations. And I remember how swiftly it all spiraled out of control, how difficult a fire it was to extinguish. This isn't a confessional, but since I can't express why I empathize with people the way that I do, I'd want them to know we cannot become that which we sought to see less of in the world. We have to be the change we want to see in the world. With all that out of the way, finally, you want to hear it. And FYI, stalling can be a great tactic to discourage what Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa called the unworthy reader, or something like that, because, if you can't read the whole book, how can you say that you understood it? So my fiancée at the time was a Levian Satanist, which is basically a form of egoism or self-worshipping branch of quote-unquote Satanism. If you're curious to know more about what kind of Satanist she was. I don't agree with much of the philosophy, which, to be frank, seemed more of a joke than a real Satanist religion to me. But I cared for her, and we moved in together. We were trying to save up and moved out, to move out of the ghetto. And, I know, some people don't even like that word, and I was trying to avoid saying locations, but for context, this was South OBT, where I was living at the time. My fiancée and I lived together, but her paychecks would sometimes come up missing, so what little I had, with no job, went towards paying for food, bills, and whatever myself usually. So when I say money was tight and I'd spent my last 20, $30 for the next week or so, that's how bad it was at the time. I had just went to one of the local stores within walking distance of my place. It was a 50-50 chance which one would be robbed that night. And I was subconsciously hoping to avoid any stray bullets, because by that point, I knew police arrived fast, and I'd seen too many shootouts, ducked behind walls and stuff. I purchased the items on my fiance's list. It's obvious she thought it out. It was well planned because I used the exact cent that I had to my name. It was about 4 days of food, realistically, and we planned to stretch it about 8 days. And this was around the time where I was only eating once or twice a week. I remember it being between 20 and $30 worth, but what came next, I doubt you'd blame me for forgetting exactly how much change exactly was in my bag. I walked out of the store, and I take 2 steps forward when the lights go out in the parking lot. And I turned, the store's closed at my back. I thought I was early, and this was a 24-hour store anyway. I turned away from the gas station door and find a handgun or a pistol pointed directly in front of my face. The man, not much taller than myself, holding it just above and about my eye level. It was dark, but I see very well at night, but no matter, I'm not going to physically describe the person any further anyway. He shouted, "Give me all your money." I went into a type of shock. Perhaps my MKUltra programming kicked in, or maybe I was even more suicidal than I'd known at the time. But my shoulders fell softly, and I began to apologize. I said I was sorry that whatever life circumstance brought the young man to this point, holding me by a gun for a potential $20. I quickly but calmly finished by saying the groceries in my bag were all my fiancé had to eat for the next week, but I would share if he needed something from me. I just asked, please don't take it all. We'll make do with whatever you leave me, but I cannot return without any food. If you must shoot me, I beg you not waste bullets, to aim true and hit me in the brain. He backed away, lowered his .45, and faded down the street into the darkness. What I really said was a little bit shorter, and I don't know exactly how it came out, writing this years later. What was spoken was purely in the moment, but it was very similar. I'm pretty sure he spoke at least 3 times, but I was in shock, having my life flash before my eyes. I do remember some of his face, the expressions at least. Although I'd never done what he did that night. I saw myself in him, or my brother, now departed. I saw a boy who needed love and a little bit of help. I saw a human heart put in a bad situation. After he left, I pretty much hurried home, but I hid on the way back. Although no police ever showed up at all, I was still afraid of a, quote-unquote misunderstanding and catching a bullet that night. And also being weirded out, not just from almost dying, but the weird details surrounding it. Not all will I mention here, but some, such as the 24-hour store closing in 2 seconds. But it doesn't end here. I made it home with the food and no bullets to my knowledge. Well, my fiancée was furious that I had returned. I thought she was just being flippant, or, the B word. So I let her continue her speech, which I can say looking back was, quite abusive. She tells me how these things aren't the things she wanted, when it's verbatim exactly as on the list. She says she wished I did get killed, because at least she wouldn't have the wrong food kind of stuff. Okay. I tried to tell her what happened, but I just kind of was, at the time, was thinking she's a passionate individual, and despite me telling her what happened, how I thought I'd almost died, all I got was guilt for living, contempt for my presence of being a constant fuck up. And the weirdness doesn't end there. No. I do this strange thing. I take the groceries. Oh, I forgot to mention. She was trying to put them in the sink to ruin them as an excuse of having no food or something insane that I'll never understand, even if I tried. So I take these groceries back to the store. In fact, I just wait in the alley. My logic was, well, maybe if I give these groceries to the guy, he won't have to hold somebody else up. But had I seen him, who knows how well that would have went. Was I supposed to jokingly say, my mistake, you can have these, my girl's crazy, and says she'd rather starve than eat now. I hadn't really thought that far ahead. I still don't know what I had hoped would happen. Waiting in a dark alley beside a closed 24/7 store. When I saw a figure approach me. It was a friendly-looking older gentleman, but strangely, he was wearing fully adorned. I mean, I'm not a Mason myself, so I maybe he was missing something, but it looked like fully adorned Masonic attire. He had the apron, the gloves. He's looking very snazzy, but very out of place, because this was South O-Town. Somewhere at this point around the witching hour of night. He calmly said, "I have a message from you, or for you, from an acquaintance of ours. Never for a moment did we not know where you are. You don't stay as hidden as you think. We know what you said, and you have been warned from speaking before an audience of that size." I fell to a knee and started to cry. I've omitted the acquaintance and sanitized code words related to my programming, but what I tell you is truth. I began raising my view to him, asking why, seeing my own ego remanifest all of a sudden. Why me? Why are they doing this? He laughed, but in a surprisingly humble way. He went back to the script he was given, when I realized that's what it was. There were more threats involving anyone I talked to, or even my family, who I'd had no communication with in several years. Well, I got kind of mad about it, or it got me kind of mad. And, I don't know if he was trying to get my goat or something, but I started to get pretty lippy. With no disrespect, I said to him, "They have sent you to deliver this message to me because of their fear to do it themselves. Because they're cowards. No number was ever specified, so how many is too many? You took issue with 10,000, but this level of harassment, because I said something out loud in a bookstore or at a flea market, so 10, 20 people is too much, and yet the drive behind this somehow isn't fear." Yeah, I said something very, very, very much like that. I looked him in the eyes, and his expression led me to believe he wanted to continue the script. It sounded like he was starting over from the beginning, when he concluded with a hand gesture or signal which brought 5 military aircraft into view. Above, and they flew over us. No cars going down the street or anything. Midnight in O-Town. The aircraft made sure to shine, or hit us with their lights. He looked at me and said, "They are no more afraid of you than of an ant ruining their picnic. You have been warned. They will create a crater of you and be done with it, no matter where you might go. A city block or your family, the casualties would be on you." I stood there stunned. I even did some weird little spin in the street to see if anyone else could see what I saw, what was happening. Right then and there, how much more public could something be? You can't hear a dozen Harrier engines above your homes. Anyway, I threw myself down on my seat, broken horror likely on my face. Mind fucked every which way. Feeling totally hopeless. I thought I'd already gave up. I thought I did what they wanted. I ran away. I kept my mouth shut. But there's no pleasing the quote-unquote Illuminati controllers. The man stayed with me for a while, but he was even kinder after giving me such bad news. We bonded briefly. After all, we had just held a moment that neither could share safely with another living soul. It was like we were the only real living people in the world for a few minutes, despite my romanticization of the mystery. It was purely platonic, I assure you. But I do value and honor privacy, so I'll keep some of the heart-to-heart stuff to myself and safeguard identifying information of persons whom cannot be entirely omitted. That man and myself didn't argue, but we discussed some disagreements. But regardless of if some group says that I'm allowed to speak or not, this was my life. And by natural law of all the known universes, it is a violation to steal from me my life's experiences. I hope they understand exactly what that means. And if they need more, the rank that I hold or held within the world government was classified beyond Restricted 7. My task was to find intelligence for ensuring safety of all nations, avoid involvement with all the nation's affairs, obey only a commander in my office, the Royal Protective Guard, a royal monarch, or their appointant, but I have been authorized to disclose information at my discretion if it has a fair chance to protect the security of all nations. Or would you like to prove rules mean nothing to rulers? For everyone else, I thank you for listening, and want to ask a few questions and wrap this up. So if you listen to my near-death experience and someone didn't pay you to harass me, I'd like to know your thoughts. Is this too scary for people to handle? Will you break the uncomfortable silence and share what is happening to me? I am not alone. This type of stuff is happening more than you realize, and innocent people are used like puppets, as I myself had been. Or will you wait? And for how long?